All right, guys.
Cheerio.
By
Jove. Radicalization in video games. By Jove.
Go ahead. Keep the intro going.
Okay. The Department of Homeland Security. No, I don't know what I'm doing now.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security will spend $700,000 to investigate radicalization through video games. No?
By Jove.
Crikey.
Steam is harboring.
Lots of incels there on the internet.
Take that, you incel.
Where did this start?
Why are we doing this?
I have no idea.
I'm sorry.
So, yes, the Department of Homeland Security says, you know what? We haven't wasted enough of your tax dollars this year.
The Fed is like, take that, you incels.
That's exactly what they're saying. They're like, you're complaining about sending money to Ukraine. Well, bam! Take that.
Fork it over.
So it says the United States Department of Homeland Security has awarded a nearly $700,000 grant to terrorism and security researchers to investigate radicalization through video games. I'm going to get to this one paragraph that is absolutely terrifying.
Go off.
Like 9/11, like Patriot Act levels terrifying in the way they phrase it. In the way they phrase it.
More people fly than play video games, I think.
As reported by Vice, the funds are headed to Middlebury Institute's Center on Terrorism and Extremism and Counterterrorism. The nonprofit organization Take This and a company looking to curb toxic online behavior called Logically. Over the past decade, video games have increasingly become focal points of social activity and identity creation for adolescents and young adults. Relationships made and fostered within video game ecosystems routinely cross over into the real world and are impactful parts of our local communities, the grant announcement on the DHS website said. Correspondingly, extremists have used video games and targeted video game communities for activities ranging from propaganda creation to terrorist mobilization and training. To which I say source, please. And then it says one of the goals. This is the truly terrifying part. It says one of the goals of this new project is to develop a set of best practices and centralized resources for monitoring and evaluation of extremist activities, as well as a series of training workshops for monitoring, detection, and prevention of extremist exploitation in video game spaces for community managers, multiplayer designers, lore developers, mechanics designers, and trust and safety personnel. They want to create... it's the Patriot Act all over again.
For gamers.
Well, they're also using a scare tactic against game developers, saying that they have fallen short of their responsibility.
Your ESG score is about to plummet if you do not give us access to your data so that we can call half of your user base alt-right extremist Yahtzees.
They said the game developers from small independent studios to billion-dollar multinational corporations have lagged in awareness of how extremists may attempt to exploit their games and how their communities can be targeted for radicalization.
We used to live in a country.
Why is it the game developers' fault or responsibility to... I don't really know what they're implying.
Mary, people who also start these groups use phones. And don't you know that if you have a phone, it is your phone provider's job. Oh, wait, no, they can't do that.
Right.
The thing is, it's incredible how we're in the year 2022 and young men are so insanely misunderstood to this day. It's incredible. I don't know how these people don't get yet that when guys are playing games and they're just getting jakey with the boys, they are just blowing off steam and trying to be edgy and funny.
It's the same thing when you play sports. Remember the thing about locker room talk? That's a real thing. Like when people complain about like Donald Trump and his comments about grab them by the you-know-what, that's a real thing. People... being inside a male sports locker room is like that. They talk in a way that they would not talk in polite society. It's part of the culture. It's part of the camaraderie of the group. And usually that chat, those conversations shouldn't leave that room because it's understood that it's part of the social makeup of that group. Right?
Yeah, and it's performative, over exaggerated.
Yes.
And almost theatrical.
Yeah.
Like, it's not to be taken literally.
No, it's not.
The fundamental issue I'm seeing, and like, correct me if you disagree, I'm seeing the same reason that maybe young men feel isolated enough where they need to seek parasocial relationships in a video game subculture. Though that is prompted by the same social factors that put them at risk to commit violence. So why is it that you're seeing a symptom as the cause?
What would you say the cause is?
Like seeking parasocial relationships and at the expense of genuine, like, real life relationships. That's what I'm talking about. Not just in conjunction with, but instead of. That's a symptom of the same isolation that puts some, like, small fraction of young men at risk to actually commit violent acts. You're pointing at a symptom of one issue and saying that it's the cause of another.
Well, that's the government in a nutshell.
And it's also, you know, doing what they usually do, which is perpetuating their own existence, creating their own problems, artificially.
Well, where will they get the next
scaremongering about dangers?
How
but
will they
also
get the next $700,000 grant if they don't prove any reason for the group to exist? That's why they talk about this with every civil rights movement, right? It has to expand, otherwise it no longer has a reason to exist.
Yes.
You have to continuously make it worse, otherwise there's no reason for you to still be a thing, and the money and the fundraising apparatus dries up.
I wish so. It's obvious and transparent that that's the reason that, you know, they just have to create jobs, no matter the cost.
Remember when was it Sarkeesian that spoke to the UN?
Anita Sarkeesian spoke to the UN.
Too many people
and so did
have spoken to the
Zoe
UN.
Quinn.
Because of misogyny in gaming.
Yep.
Emma Watson has spoken to the UN. I mean, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
It is funny to me as a thing where it's like, this conversation will never end. Video game violence has been a conversation since
Forever.
the 90s, since I was but a young lad.
And they used to be like the censorious Republicans that would freaking insist time and time again that video games were making children violent.
Yep.
Nonstop. And it would be against GTA in particular. They would always, which is I think why it's ironic that the thumbnail for this one in particular.
I also wonder if they talk about like they're worshiping school shooters and stuff like that, right?
I
I
bet
think
they're
that's a
not.
response to the overreaction in the 90s so you've demonized this culture. You're saying so now they're memeing on your demonization, and now you're somehow taking seriously what was memed upon something you took too seriously beforehand.
So, like, guess how many Steam users are there? Maybe
my
like
God.
over 100 million? Over 100 million, probably.
Let me do a quick Google.
And in this report, I saw hyperlinked from the ADL about extremism being harbored on Steam.
The one about
They pointed out 200 Steam accounts that embraced and propagated Yahtzee or supremacist ideology.
120 million.
So we just found 200 Steam accounts out of 120 million accounts.
Let's find the percentage of that.
And we're saying that Steam has liability for that?
It's kind of the
Excuse
same thing
me?
that when me and you talk about how like these companies, they never understand scale. So they make something 12 psychos,
Because they're boomers. They don't understand what the internet is.
12 mentally ill psychos on Twitter, half of which could be bots, say, I was offended by this. And they're like, oh my God, I just got 12 emails in a row. This must be unbelievably offensive. We better change it.
Let me
when
contact-
realistically, what we know is they should do is say F off.
Yeah, that's one thing. Maybe Gen Z rising up into these executive positions eventually, which is scary enough as it is. But at least they understand scale on the internet. So they understand blowback from 10 people isn't a PR crisis. And they understand that 200 accounts on Steam out of 120 million users,
which equates
is
to
not
0.00016% of the base.
Yep.
and Steam is supposed to be liable for that legally.
Not all Steam users.
This
Right.
is just NGOs and the government basically kneecapping an entire industry within entertainment.
A huge industry too.
It's threatening to completely handicap this industry.
Thank you.
Just so they can make like 20 jobs for intelligence agents. It's incredible.
For a survey that will be nebulous and have a bunch of results that no actual human being will care about or read.
Right.
Yeah, and it's also so, these blue checks can go on Twitter and make a thread about how they uncovered the seedy underbelly
Do you remember
video game culture.
Do you remember the alt-right pipeline? And it was it was like the graph, and it was like somebody created a graph like somebody who watches Steven Crowder got their way from Jimmy Dore, who got their way from the Young Turks. How did you end up on the alt-right?
You guys think we'll be in version 2?
I hope so. I hope I get to be. I would consider. Yeah, if I get to repost an article like, "Hey, look, Mom, I made it." Like I'm on the alt-right pipeline, like our channel, which talks about Amber Heard and Ezra Miller being a psychopath, somehow makes us bad.
I hope if they have a picture of me, it says main guest host.
Yes. So that would be how you'll probably be the one leaking all the information to them. Fed.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, I went there.
Wow.
All 3 of us are feds.
Yes. Well, it's like this our own version of that picture of the guys at the cookout, and they're all clearly feds with the haircut and the shorts, and they've all got the Oakleys on. Like that's us up here. We're all plotting.
Maybe we're feds with like a strange personal rivalry against the ADL and the ACLU.
And that's the long and the short of it, right? What will happen is like it's going to be a bunch of like FBI agents like edging people into like edging on like people to do stuff, and it'll be 9 FBI agents telling 2 people to go, hey man, want to go do some extremism?
Like how many
of
these 200 Steam accounts that the ADL identified were either feds or bots?
Exactly.
And then another thing in this report was a specific focus on video games focused on the World War II historical period, which they inherently find suspicious. They said interest in this historical period is, of course, not uncommon or inherently hateful or racist, but these Steam games do appear to attract users who glorify the Yahtzee party, SS soldiers, and prominent Yahtzee figures, especially certain
mini mustache
donning
man. Yes.
One of them.
So I wonder how much of this is like is this your own culture being thrown back at you like a boomerang? Like you use that insult for everyone, and eventually society hates you so much that they start to meme your inability to come up with an actual coherent insult. So if you call everyone an alt-right Yahtzee, they're going to make joke Yahtzee groups because F you. Right? Like they're sick of being called that, so they wear it as a badge of honor because they know they're not.
And that's how incredibly unself-aware these people, how incredibly unself-aware and how humorless they are, that they don't understand that you're calling them a Yahtzee and you don't even mean it, and they are making light of it, and they are so humorless that they don't even understand that that's what's happening when it's so evident.
What's that meme? It says like when one of your senses gets dulled, other ones become more heightened, which is why people who with no sense of humor have such a heightened sense of self-importance. Like that's what it is, and it does feel like they make it's weird because they make light of it by overusing the term all the time. But then but they're also super serious about it at the same time.
There's very few pejoratives that stick anymore.
No. I mean, at this point, what hasn't everyone been called once or twice?
But buddy, I've been called it all.
Like the Fed?
Yeah.
The Fed?
Now.
Fed. See, this is why Dane's trying to get us talking about this one, because he wants to like, oh, why would I talk about this? If I was the Fed, I'd be trying to get us off this topic.
You guys got any confessions?
So
the risk I see for a company like Steam, though, is getting debanked because of controversies like this. Because the companies that do like I don't have the vocabulary for it, but like the companies that allow a multi-billion-dollar company like Steam to exist and do transactions have their own PR to worry about,
like the
and
payment
their
processors?
own reputation. Yes, payment processors.
So like your Stripe
and banks.
And banks.
Yeah, they have their own reputations to worry about too.
And that's been going on now too. We've seen more of that lately. Where was it? Gavin McInnes gets his entire bank account frozen, right? Because they don't like what he says.
So who's to say they can't do that to a large company and not just individuals?
Patreon does that to individuals all the time. Why couldn't they do it to a large scale company? I guess the idea is that capitalism's king. So yeah, sure, they don't want you to host these things, but we really want your money too. So I don't know. That's hard to say, but it does feel like that's a very, very slippery slope. And as we've learned, that the slippery slope thing is very true in the last few years.
I have a suggestion.
What is this suggestion?
Perhaps their resources and man or woman power thank you, can be better invested in actually catching hateful groups that are outwards towards their hate for citizens.
What does that even mean anymore? I don't even know what that means.
Brother, I don't know.
You're allowed to hate people here.
Amen.
You're allowed to hate people here. It's stupid, but you're allowed to do it.
I exercise that right quite often.
That's true, but also the provocateurs on Xbox Live or Steam or wherever they happen to be on the internet have generally no ill will or genuine hatred behind the jokes they make. And even further, they have no violent intent toward any of these groups being mentioned. It's pure scaremongering. And I mean, really, if capitalism is king, Steam does have an interest in bending to the will of NGOs and the DHS because they don't want to be unfairly penalized and have their payment processing taken away from them over.
Is the government able to do that? I feel like it would be easier for the at this point for the
well, the government
corporations
is using. Yeah, the government is using their entities to put pressure on private companies to bend to their will.
Imagine the banks just stop processing government payments one day. you can pay your
base.
You you can pay your IRS bill online and they just sorry, we're not taking your payments today.
Oh my God, what a great idea.
That would never happen.
No, it would never happen.
You know?
Guys, we got them.
It just feels like bullying. Even though it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation that we're talking about, it feels like somehow they're being bullied by an investigation that costs $700,000 to launch.
Also, I do want to point out that times are tough if they couldn't even round up to $1 million. Right.
Well, they're even a few $100s short of $700K.
Where did that number come from?
I don't know.
Is there just a useless grant number generator that they use to figure out where the hell the money comes from? Where did that number come from? Round up.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you really want to sound like you're doing your part to stop bigotry and hatred, round that up to a cool $1 million. It sounds. Haven't you learned anything from the opposite direction?
It's about intimidation.
When Target wants to lean you into something, they price it down to sound better to you. So they say it's not $10, it's $9.99. If you want to sound better going the other way, you don't say, oh, it's $700,000. You round up and you say it's $1 million. That's what they should be doing.
I just don't know what they expect individuals in the video game subculture to do about this, or why should they care?
To shut up. They want you to be so scared of what could happen because you're going to be put on some list somewhere that you'll just keep your thoughts to yourself.
Is it just give up your hobby and go home, pack it up?
I think to your question, I think they want access to voice chats.
Well, that's what we were talking about on another show. That they're implementing AI moderators in
what could go wrong?
What were the voice chats we were talking about on? There was a certain video game that implemented.
On Twitch?
No, it was a bunch of different. It was several different video games that they were beta testing on.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep up with what happened there.
Can't
But we
wait.
did talk about that.
But it is also funny to watch, like, you're getting to play these really violent games. Like, imagine, like, you're like
Everything you say on voice chat is being transcribed.
yeah, like you're like it's not the extremely violent video game. It's what you say while playing the extremely violent video game. It's kind of
Yeah.
a perfect amalgamation of the world we live in now. You can do all the awful things in the real world, but what you say on Twitter is what really gets you in trouble. It kind of
Yeah.
is a perfect encapsulation. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.